How's it going, people? Hope you're well. Welcome back to the show. If you haven't catched it already, make sure you go and watch the Arsenal United show that I've just done with Saeed, Premzi, and of course Kaz. Talking a little bit about Arsenal United and who's going to finish higher than who, and talk about the clubs as a whole, really, in terms of how far we've fallen and how we'd like to get back to the top. But tonight, I am joined by a host of guests to talk a little bit more about Premier League roundup and see where we are in terms of our predictions and some of our feelings going into some of these games towards the weekend. Now that football is thankfully back. Big up my panel, Emilio. Big up Ash. Big up Billy. D is back without Maz to banter, so he's going to be a bit bored tonight. But we welcome Dave, our Forest fan, to the channel. Dave, thank you so much for coming on, bro.
Pleasure, Dan. Good to see all you lads. I'll have to put off watching the last episode of Shetland to the iPlay later on.
Mate, you make sure you don't miss that, though. Absolutely.
No, mate, no.
Listen, boys, it's going to be a little bit different tonight because we're not going to talk about how things were last weekend or how things are at the moment because of the football that hasn't been played. But what I will say is we're going to do a little bit of a predictions and a little bit of an understanding of where we think the teams around us are at. Now, we're going to exclude Arsenal because I've done enough content last night and tonight on Arsenal already, and it gives me a bit of a break, and that's why I like this show. So we're going to talk about Fulham, Leicester, Forest, Villa, and Palace, and maybe some of the other teams around you, just to look at whereabouts you guys are this season, because there's a lot of happy fans, there's a lot of sad fans, there's a lot of confused fans, I think, as well. And I think that's the Premier League for you, you know, and people will know when you come up into this league, it's never an easy game. And I think apart from maybe, and I'll say it because they're not on here, Bournemouth at the moment, I'm not looking at any club, even Leicester, Ash, and going, that's an easy 3 points. So I do think that this one of those games, one of those leagues that can be tough, whoever you get. Whether it's Man City, whether it's Fulham, whether it's Leicester, whether it's Palace, you're always going to have a tough time. So I want to look at where your feelings are on each of your clubs, and I want to do this in a bit of a different format, a bit of a different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at who we think is in trouble this season. Now, it doesn't have to be anybody's on this panel. It can be teams that aren't on this panel tonight. But I want to look at who we think's in trouble, because my predictions at the start of this season were for Everton, Fulham, and Bournemouth to go down. And I'm not going to go after 6 games. Oh, my God, that was a madness decision. It looks as if that's going to be completely wrong now, because I'm going to stick by it because it's only 6 games in and a lot can change. But I wanted to look at the rest of the panel and see who they think is in trouble in terms of a relegation, not just a battle, but who they think is actually, wow, I don't think they're safe. And it's going to be interesting now that we're 6 games in to see if anything has changed from you. So I'm going to be really random and start with Billy. Bill, there's a lot of teams at the moment that have been up and down. There's a lot of teams at the bottom that I certainly didn't predict being in the bottom. But looking from what you've seen so far, has anything changed your opinions on who might go down this season?
Not too much, to be honest with you. I always thought that Bournemouth were going to go down despite getting 3 points against us on the opening day, which is still a bit embarrassing. But yeah, I think I called Everton as well to go down, and Fulham. I don't think Fulham will go down. They played some really nice football. Mitrovic. It was always very dependent on Mitrovic for me. If he could continue his scoring form like he did, or unlike he did previously when they were in the Premier League. I know he didn't really get played by Scott Parker too much. But if he could continue scoring from last season, then they were going to be safe. And, you know, the fixtures that they've had, the teams that they've played, and he's still got scoring goals, that's going to be enough to keep them up for me. As well as Andreas Pereira, who's a fantastic signing for them, looks really, really solid. Some of the deliveries that I've seen him put into the box look really dangerous. And when you've got the players like Mitrovic in the box to get on the end of them, there's always going to be a goal threat there. So I think Fulham will be safe in the end. Who do I think is going to replace them? I really don't know. It really could be anyone. I don't want to look at you, Ash, but if things don't turn around quickly, then it really could be. And you know, no one's too big to go down in this league. We've seen that several times before. There's going to be a shock, if you want to call it a shock, sooner rather than later, and it could be Leicester, the team that won the Premier League, all of a sudden dropped back down to the Championship.
Can you imagine, man? Can you imagine? Ash, let's take it to you, man, because Leicester, okay, let's put it this way. When you weren't signing people, I started to worry a bit for you. But I always thought your first 11 was good, right?
Yeah.
Few weaker players, but good. I always believed Brendan Rodgers is a good enough manager to be a Premier League manager. I never thought he was elite, but I always thought he'd be a good enough manager. I've been shocked at how bad you've been, man. Like, I've been shocked at how poor it is. Everybody's laughing, oh, Leicester 3 points, Leicester 3 points. I never thought we'd be saying that, mate. And although I thought you might struggle, I didn't expect a relegation sort of fight. And that's where it's looking at the moment, man. So are you starting to believe that you could go down this season, mate?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not looking promising in the goalkeeping position. Ward, who we've got in goal, I don't like to sort of get at our team's players, but he's just not good enough, is he? Yeah. He's literally just not good enough. He looks like, when you used to play for a Sunday League team when you were a kid and you used to have to round a goalie up from near the shop. What size boots are you, mate? It's a bit like that, to be honest, with Ward in goal at the minute. And he looks lost on his line. He's not coming out to collect anything. The defence don't know what they're doing. We've signed this one guy to replace Fofana. We've not seen him play yet because his work visa wasn't, if I'm correct, in time for the Brighton fixture. So that was something else that went wrong. We've finally now got the guy in, the recruitment guy. His visa's cleared, but the window's shut. But my question is January too late to be trying to fix a season staying up? I mean, we all know Newcastle managed it last season when they had a strong window, but we're not Newcastle United and we're not going to have that kind of money to throw around. We need a goalkeeper desperately, or we need at least to start playing Everson, who we're playing in the League Cup. And he looks a lot more solid and well-rounded than Ward does, in my opinion.
Mate, 39, Ben Foster, free transfer. Just go do it, man. That'll sort you out better, I tell you.
Just somebody that can command the box. That's all we need. Because if this new centre-back's any good, Evans knows what he's doing. He's aging, yeah. But we've got Castagna and Justin. And surely that back line's good enough to stay in the Premiership. Like that, I may be being a bit blue-tinted here, but I think that's good enough to stay in the Premiership, that back four. But it is troubles. We look in trouble. I mean, the stadium expansion's been cleared by the council tonight. I mean, what's going on?
It is a madness. It is a madness. Go on, D.
Dang, just quickly. With Leicester, I'll say that you lot are very lucky that you're in the form that you're in right now, because up until January, there isn't that many games. I think it's about 9 to 11 games. So you do have that opportunity to go and strengthen if you need to. And the fact that it's happened this season because of the World Cup break and the games being postponed, especially over this weekend as well, I suspect them games will be played most likely after the New Year's at this point anyways. So you still have the opportunity. But if you're looking at the likes of Ben Foster to come and save you, I mean, that in itself is just worrying. I guess if you allow the GoPro and make him happy like that, and you can have a GoPro behind the goal, and maybe give him like $2,000 a week with the allowance of a GoPro behind a goal, he might be able to save you. But yeah, that is worrying times.
He'd probably cycle there, wouldn't he, lads?
Yeah. It was cycle there on a podcast while he's cycling.
Live podcast.
Actually,
there's so much opportunity
Tour de
there.
France next year.
Man, I do.
It is worrying. Like we've got a position that we've got players there that probably wouldn't even get in a lot of championship sides. And that's when you've got to worry. It could be a very, very, very... Let's face it, Rodgers is gone at the weekend, isn't he? We've got Spurs. The game's on. We've been told as Leicester City fans, we're not going to beat Tottenham, are we? And I think
hope
that...
you do, man.
You never know.
Is it at your place, Ash?
I think we're away. I'm sure we're away.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
But it's not good.
No, it ain't good at all, man.
Yeah,
away to Spurs, I can't see that, man. Not after they've just lost to Sporting. I think Conte's going to want to win that game, man. So, yeah, that's not going to be good for you, Ash. And Rodgers could be in trouble, mate. And it wouldn't surprise me if he does go at some point. I don't know that the team at the moment is actually kind of what's the word, gelled together. I think Tielemans wants out. I think Maddison's questioning his future. Vardy's just trying to stay a footballer for the last couple of years at Leicester. Obviously, you've got, some of the players at the back that's question marks about, and no goalkeeper. It's not looking good, bro. And I like Leicester. I do, Ash. I like
The
Leicester.
most disappointing thing is against Brighton, Daka and Nacho played up top, and they actually looked really sharp. Like, our front line actually looked really good that game. But then the defence frailties and the goalkeeper issue, you're not going to win games if half your team's not performing.
Yeah.
It's that simple, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you could be in trouble. The other two teams I said that would be in trouble, Bournemouth, there's no Bournemouth fan on here. I don't think there's anyone who expects them to do anything but go down, if I'm honest with you. And that's no disrespect. I just don't think they're good enough, if I'm honest with you. But one team that has impressed me, Emilio, is Fulham. I did say that with Mitrovic, we always had a chance. And I did like Fulham's style of play and the fact that they were trying to do something about the improvement on what Parker had kind of left. And I think what your manager's done has been good. You've definitely got some good players. Billy's mentioned a couple already. You must be fairly confident to stay up. And I know that, to be fair, Emilio, you were at the start of the season because you had faith in Mitrovic. So are you still quite comfortable? And what's your expectation with Fulham, bro?
Nothing's changed. It's all about finishing 17th, to be honest. I think that's the priority. I think it's staying up is the priority. I think the fact that we have done well so far, but I keep saying this, maybe being a little bit greedy. I think we should have more points on the board, and that's a slight nagging down in my mind. When Liverpool game, I think the Liverpool game on another day we would have got 3 points, but you take a point against arguably the second best team in Europe last season. Wolves away, we should have got 3 points. We missed a penalty. That's another 2 points we've dropped. Arguably against Arsenal, we're a few minutes away from holding out, maybe grabbing an undeserved equaliser. But again, we fought, we battled, could have got a point there. Even Tottenham away, we got out fought for 75 minutes. We almost scored 2 goals in the last quarter of an hour to nick another point. So 8 points is a good return, probably better than I expected, maybe a couple of points more. But in hindsight, for the way we've played and the opportunities we've had, I'm disappointed we haven't got more like 10 or 11. But let's not be greedy here. I think I'm pleased that we've got 8. We're playing well. So far we've had a few injuries that set us back a little bit, but overall we've had a solid transfer window. Thankfully, there's other teams worse than us at the moment. I like Leicester. I agree with Billy. I think there's going to be a surprise package here. I think Leicester have got enough still to, like you said, they've got enough. They've got still 30 odd games to turn it around. And my worry is, do we get sucked into that relegation? We've had 2 defeats out of 3 against Arsenal and Tottenham. We've got Forest again on Friday night. Again, we lose that. The input, you get all the benefit, Dave, and we get dragged back into that relegation mode. So the next few games are going to be quite key. Can we push on, grab a few more points, or are we going to get sucked back in despite the good start? We're starting losing a few games. So good start. Still nervous. Let's be honest. I think we have to be nervous. I think there's still worse teams than us, but I think you made a point, Dan. And everyone could take points of each other this season. I predicted, obviously, Bournemouth to go down. I actually said I thought it was Leeds or Southampton. I thought one of those two would struggle this year. I still believe one of those two will get sucked down. I think Leeds are conceding a lot of goals, but they've still got something in them at Ellen Road to win games. For Southampton, you don't know what you're going to get from them. 1 week they're very good, and the next week they're awful. I still feel an established Premier League team will go down. Maybe Leicester, it might be Southampton. It could even be yourself, Billy Villa. Again, great point against Man City. Get something out of that game, but it's consistency in this level. That's the problem. We've had a few, good start, but how can we continue to maintain that level of quality and beat the teams around us? More importantly, so we have to start not lose against Forest on Friday and start and maybe hopefully pick up 3 points. If we lose that, then I'm going to be looking down, not up. So good start, but things can change very quickly. That's my reservation. We should probably have more points on the board for the level of quality of football we've played and the plaudits we've received from a lot of the neutrals. I think that's this. But it's only 8 points on the board at the end of the day, so it's a long way to go yet.
Yeah, and I think you can be encouraged by what you've seen so far.
Yeah,
I think you've played some really tough sides. I think you've gone up against it, and I think you've been well respected by a lot of the neutrals, and rightly so, because I think you've played well, and I think Mitrovic has proved that he can do it in the Premier League, and I think he's a great chance and should be encouraged that he's going to, well, as long as you keep him fit, that is, that he's going to give you a chance, and you're always going to score goals. But Dave, I'll come to you because that game's going to be vital, as every game is, but that game's going to be vital for you. I tipped you guys to be the surprise package of the season, and everyone thought I was a bit crazy for saying it, right? But I'll tell you why I said it. The reason I said it was 2 reasons. I think your owner is ambitious. I love your manager. I think he's outstanding. And I knew you'd be backed, and I knew you'd sign players. Now, I was wrong. You wasn't going to sign players. You was going to sign 150 players, right? So I tipped you to do well. Hasn't looked too great in parts, but I certainly still stand by. I think you'll stay up because I think what you get with Forest is what Steve Cooper brings, and that's fight, passion, desire. And I think that will be enough to keep you up with some of the players that you have got. I think once they settle, once they start to find form, and once Cooper gets some, his feet under the table with new players, I really fancy Forest still to stay up. And there's nothing I've seen that has made me go, oh, Forest look terrible. They're in trouble yet. So let's see what happens there. What's your thoughts, man, on Forest and relegation?
To be honest with you, Dan, I would have agreed with all of that up until half-time against Bournemouth. In the second half against Bournemouth. I'm really glad you lads didn't see that because it was a horror show.
Sorry.
Across the
D
board,
would have seen it. D would have seen that. You know what I'm saying? Everyone else keeps quiet. You know what I mean?
But they have to give credit to Bournemouth as well.
It was like The Exorcist. My head turned 360 degrees and I spat out. You know what I mean? It's just, up to that point, if you take our season in chronology, Newcastle were too good for us, and it was a welcome to the Premier League. West Ham, we battled hard, we rode our luck, we got our 3 points. Everton, we should have come away from there with 3, but we gave a daft goal away at the end. Tottenham were better than us, brilliant on the counter, allowed us to have lots of the ball and then countered us. We came out of it with credit. City was like disappearing to another planet, where a team playing walking football were 20 minutes ahead of Forest, who were chasing around like blue-bottom flies. And then the Bournemouth game changed quite a lot of our mood, really, because up until then we were kind of like, hey, we're all right, we're doing okay. But then I felt that at 2-0 up at half-time, we were there under sufferance, and we weren't, 2-0 flattered us, and Bournemouth were actually well in the game. And then second half, if Gary O'Neill wanted to do an audition to replace Scott Parker, he could not have done any better. Bournemouth were magnificent in the second half, much as it pains me to say it. So we're all of us tipping Bournemouth to go down. But if any of you had seen Bournemouth play second half against us when they rallied from 2 down to win 3-2, I think now Bournemouth have shifted Parker out of the way with he's quite a negative character, and I think he was digging at the ownership there. And I don't think he was creating a good aura around the club. I think under Gary O'Neill, they took a point off the Wolves when they were battered and kept them to 0-0. They took 3 off us when we should have had 3. If we'd managed the game and been less naive, so Bournemouth are kind of in their pitching. The thing is, the way I looked at it at the start of the season, my 3 to go down were Southampton, and I still think that they, like I think Emilio said, could be anything. I had Fulham to go down, but Fulham, I think, deserve a huge amount of credit. And I think what they've done, and particularly their talisman, they've reversed the trend of Mitrovic in the Premier League. And I think he's been magnificent this season. And he's getting good support from the likes of Andreas Pereira and people. They've still got Harry Wilson to come back. He'll provide crosses and whatever. In fact, with Fulham, we were at Newcastle on the opening day of the season. We're up in the top. I think we're about 1,000 feet up in the away end at Newcastle. It took me half an hour to walk up the steps, right? I wish I'd taken the lift. And we were watching Fulham against Liverpool on a screen, and all us Forest fans were going, blimey, Fulham are playing some good stuff. And Fulham have kind of carried that on. And Fulham, I think Fulham will be safe. I still think Bournemouth will go because I just think they won't have quite enough. But you know what? Leeds as well. I think Leeds. We played Bournemouth last game, but I would rather have us after the City game. I'd rather have us gone to Ellen Road because I would fancy us more at Ellen Road than I did Bournemouth coming to us, because what a lot of our lot did, and a lot of our lot were quite deluded. Well, this is Bournemouth. This is the easy one. We've done Tottenham and City. We'll win this one, and I think we took our eyes off the ball. And so, looking at it, I think Southampton could drop in. Fulham, I think, will be fine. Leeds could be in there. I don't think Everton. When Everton get Calvert-Lewin back, I think they'll be all right. I really do. I quite liked Everton when I saw them at Goodison. Damari Gray and Anthony Gordon were very useful. You have to put us into the equation because at the moment we are the great enigma of this division. And I say that because we've signed 22, and none of us, not even Steve, who is a brilliant man manager and a brilliant communicator, he doesn't know his best 11. And I don't think you'll see the real Forest until after the World Cup. It's going to take that long. I think because we've come so far so fast, it's almost like everything's been rushed upon us. We had less time to prepare than anybody because our playoff win was like 29th of May. Everybody else had finished. Then there were 5 loans that had to go. There were contracts that ended. People simply weren't good enough. And so the only thing that annoys me, lads, is that the media have picked on the number of signings, and there was this lazy doing of Fulham, right? What they haven't done, what they haven't bothered to do because they're idle and they lack intellect, they haven't looked in at Forest and said, well, those 5 who got us up had to go back. And they've just kind of casually dismissed us. So until we find our best 11, we have to be considered a relegation candidate as a promoted club, a club that's not been there for 23 years. Because what I won't do is I won't come on here and I won't be like so partisan Forest. I think everything's right and every other club's rubbish. I'm going to come on here and be realistic. Now, of the others, I think the Villa will be fine. Palace, they are an excellent club. Palace are a role model I think Forest should look at. A bit like Brighton, a bit like Brentford, right? I think the Wolves could be in it, but they've signed Diego Costa, so they've got themselves a striker. The one that really worries me is my good friend above here, Ash. I just feel with Leicester. Now, when Leicester won the league, I'm a Forest fan, but I was gagging for Leicester to win the league. I thought it was one of the great football stories, right? The 5,000 to 1ers. I just feel with Leicester that cycle is coming to an end naturally. It's like an organic movement of time where like Jamie's coming to the end of towards the end of his career. You know, I thought letting Kasper Schmeichel go was a really worrying development. And I just think, like you lads have said, or some of you lads have said, there's always one that you don't expect to kind of drop into the mire. And my worry for Ash is that it could be Leicester. Now, my Leicester thing is kind of coloured by our FA Cup game last year, where we beat Leicester 4-1, and we couldn't believe how much we dominated Leicester. Now, in a couple of weeks' time, say Rodgers goes after Tottenham, then what we're going to get, we play Fulham on Friday night, which, as Emilio says, is a huge game. It's a cup final, even this stage of the season. Then our next game is Leicester away on October the 3rd on a Monday night. You know, and if Rodgers has gone, then like we got with Gary O'Neill, we might get a Leicester bounce. So I'm coming round to saying, lads, I haven't a clue really.
Could have saved all that time, Dave. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, like, if you asked Dor, right? Dor asked me on. We did a deadline day special the other week. And I wanted to go on until the early hours, but he had to cut it short at 2 hours, you know what I mean? But I just think, for us, it's great to be in it. We're having to adapt. We're having to learn. I'm personally not getting carried away. We've got a lot of work to do to stay up. So we'll see what goes on. But it's just great to be in the Prem. I mean, Championship's on tonight. It's great not to have to bother with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can leave that, man. Leave it, and you can actually get on with life. It's brilliant. Now, fair play to you, man. A lot of what you said there is fair, Dave. I don't think anyone will disagree with you on that one. But I want to come to D and Billy in a different way, because if I'm honest with you, I know Billy things ain't looking rosy, but I never had Villa to go down, and I certainly didn't have Palace to get anywhere near the relegation zone, in my opinion. I think what Palace has done under Patrick Vieira, and I love to see it, if I'm honest, obviously as a Gooner, has been sensational, man. And I've been a massive fan. And I was actually thinking that it could have been a potential banana skin for Arsenal in the first game. And to be fair, it nearly was, because they had a couple of chances and it could have quite easily been a draw that night. But I'm going to ask some questions, because I feel like we need to answer some of this stuff that's coming in, right? I want to know 2 things, and I want an answer from you all. I'll start with D. D, who is the next manager to get sacked, in your opinion?
Next manager to get sacked. You put me on the spot there. I was not expecting that. I was just gonna quickly say, we're talking about relegation.
No, go on, bro.
Yeah, we're talking about relegation, but it's lawless. Like, they have a massive game where Sam and Everton. Like, he should be here. He should be here right now, talking about West Ham and their prospect, because they'll get carried away. But look,
trust me, last night we had him.
He's just coming out swinging for anyone and everyone, isn't he?
No, look, I'm joking about West Ham, but in terms of next manager to get sacked, it's so like, well, of course, you've got the likes of. Like you look at Bournemouth, they sacked their manager. And of course, the new clubs, Fulham, they seem like they're happy, and I don't think Forest will sack Cooper as well. So if you take them out of the equation, it has to be Brendan Rodgers. If we move on from Brendan Rodgers, apart from Leicester City, I think the names that are interesting. I don't know if Billy agrees with me here. I know that they got a good result against Manchester City, but there has been question marks about Steven Gerrard going forward because there has been a slight form carrying on from last season towards the end of last season when Villa were pretty much safe. And it hasn't been too great. Of course, that Man City game kind of picked up the things on their side of things. But I think Aston Villa and Everton is interesting. And I wouldn't say David Moyes yet, but I have to admit, I like West Ham, what they've done, but I don't know if it's going to be sustainable under Moyes. I don't know that. I have a question mark that's been lingering in my head for ages. They've had a good 2 seasons under Moyes. They've had the European football, but even in that period, like I've seen West Ham fans complaining about team selection, about certain players that he's favoriting. I don't know if it'll be this season, but I think sooner rather than later it's going to catch up to them, and Moyes will be in that reckoning. But that's a wild card for me. It's between right now Gerrard and Frank Lampard, even though Frank Lampard is a bit less likely, other than Brendan Rodgers, who I think is next in line. In all honesty, I don't know how he's going to survive.
Yeah, the fixture that was just cancelled was labelled the El Sacchio, if I'm right, between Leicester and Villa.
El Sacchio.
I think that would have been fair as well.
God, I tell you, man, whoever would have lost that would have been a shocker, wouldn't it? To be fair, I think they both kept their jobs by a week thanks to the old Queenie, if I'm honest. God, that is serious. But Billy, talk to me, man. Is the next manager to be sacked going to be Steven Gerrard?
It wouldn't surprise me. I think we're both. No, I think we were unfortunate that the Leicester game got cancelled, to be honest with you, because as I mentioned in the previous episode, it was the perfect opportunity for us to take that momentum into Leicester. They're still on a downer, looking for their first 3 points of the season. We've just got a point against Man City. It was a real opportunity for us to go out, get 3 points, and push on for now. And then hopefully get 3 points against Southampton. Then we've got a decent run. We've got Leeds after the international break. Then we've got Forest before it goes a little bit tough again. So it was a real opportunity for us to push on and get some momentum behind us. Unfortunately, it got cancelled. And I think a lot of that momentum's probably been halted a little bit. So it's a massive game tomorrow. I was saying before that I think we needed to get 6 points off Leicester and Southampton. If we didn't, Gerrard probably has to go. I still think that's the case. If we don't get 3 points against Southampton, an international break's the perfect opportunity to get rid of a manager. Gives him 2 weeks. Get Pochettino in, for example. I still think that's a genuine possibility. And then we've all of a sudden got that new manager bounce again. And then we can hopefully get a win against Leeds, which isn't going to be easy, especially after an international break. They've had 2 weeks to recover from their relentless running. It was always a problem when they, with Bielsa as well, playing Leeds after an international break was an awful fixture. So yeah, we've got, like I say, new manager bounce against Leeds, going into Forest, hopefully get a win against them as well, and then take that momentum on a bit further. I just don't know what's
your squad's good
happen.
enough, Billy. Your squad's good
definitely
enough.
good enough. We've got plenty in the squad. We've got.
That's why I look at Gerrard. Well. That's why I look at Gerrard. Your squad's good enough, mate.
That's the thing, and we're 10 months in, not far off 11 months in, and we're still not sure what the best team is. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. I have my idea what the best team is. Every Villa fan out there has an idea of what their best team is, but we're making so many changes week in, week out that none of the players can form these bonds together, and it's a worry. But yeah, I do think that it's between Gerrard or Rodgers to get sacked. I've heard that, I don't know how true this is, Ash, but I've heard Rodgers has a massive payoff, which is why they may not sack him. And if he decides to walk, then so be it. But why would he miss out on a big payoff, you know? So whether that's true or not, I'm not too sure. But if that's the case, then I'd probably bank on it being Gerrard, to be honest with you. But it all depends on that Southampton game on Friday night. If we get 3 points, then I think he has to keep it until we play Leeds and then Forest after the international break. If we lose or draw, he's got to go, I think.
Listen, Leeds, Southampton, Forest. They ain't a shocking, run of fixtures. To be fair, you'd fancy, if you're going to win games, you wouldn't mind them 3 being picked out the hat. So that's no disrespect. It's close games with Villa. So definitely. I think it's going to be close. Ash, I'm going to say it. I think it'll be Brendan next. I really do. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this weekend sounds horrible. He's gone. In my opinion, he's gone. Rumours, obviously, on all the pages that I follow and everything like that, Leicester City wise, coming out the camp is that it's a very unsettled vibe there. Some players are involved, still really wanting it. Some players not looking so good. I mean, there's a photo floating around of Vardy giving the eye to him when he gets brought off the other week, which didn't look positive. And the last time Vardy looked at a manager like that was Puel, and he was gone 2 weeks later. So
Vardy's eyes, they're cursed.
Yeah, I think he's gone. I think Rodgers. I think the board is just being fair to him in terms of next fixture. After that, there's literally no excuse.
Who do you want, Ash? If he goes,
who would I like in? Do you know what? I'd like someone like Poch, but they're not going to come in at the minute because I don't think we can throw the money at him that he's probably going to need. He probably could get the best out of the group of players we've got, and maybe reassess it in January or the end of next season. But even someone like I quite like Sean Dyche. I do, and I think he's a good man manager. And I think if he could come in and get something out of the players, then why not?
I think he deserves that opportunity at a bit of a. No disrespect to Burnley, but a bit of a bigger club.
Look at these faces.
I'm just saying, like you just said that you wouldn't mind Sean Dyche. I've never heard of someone. That's how you know Leicester are like desperate for someone just to come in. The fact that you're like, I wouldn't mind Sean Dyche. I'm like, what?
Keep it tight.
Leicester deserve better. And I don't know if your players would like Sean Dyche as well, because you got a bit of a creative squad. That's what I feel like looking at from the outside with like the likes of Maddison, etc. I don't know if it'll be a good suit, but I guess if he keeps you up, then fairs. But the fact that Leicester went from winning the league to now wanting Sean Dyche, I mean, no disrespect to Sean Dyche, he's a good manager.
Yeah.
But still, for a club like Leicester that we're talking about going and trying to aim for the top 6 and pushing on, that's very surprising. Even the likes of Bournemouth haven't gone down that route. They're going with the caretaker manager and seeing how it goes like that. So the fact that Leicester are that bad is really worrying.
I think it is that stage though, isn't it? Because Leicester will be like, right, Sean, come in, keep us up because we could be going down, and then we'll see what we can do after that. But I mean, listen, somebody like Marcelo Bielsa might be a better option in terms of attractive football.
But would he keep them up though? That's the problem. We've seen it.
That's the question mark.
It's very expensive football. I guess the new manager bounce, it might work, but he demands a lot from his players. And looking at some of the lesser players and looking at the likes of Maddison, for example, there's been problems about his attitude in the past. The Leicester squad, of course, Ash, you know better than me. Yeah, I don't know if the Leicester squad will be able to handle Bielsa because it's not built for everyone, that type of football. You need a different mental ability to just to stick with it week in, week out, come to training and train like that, perform like that. It's very demanding. I don't think it's built for every single player. So no. I think that's more risky than Sean Dyche. At least Sean Dyche is going to be a certain type of football, whereas Bielsa is going to be physically demanding, mentally demanding, and it's more risky for me if they went with the Bielsa route rather than Sean Dyche.
Yeah, and you've got someone like Bielsa as well, and you have players like Tielemans who aren't 100% into the club. He's going at the end of the season. I just feel like I think the professionalism in him, he'll get on with it. But at the same time, there's also something inside me that thinks that he'll just go, I'm not doing this. I'm not working this hard. You know, I genuinely do. And I think for players that are unhappy at a club, that have only 1 year left on their contract, I think that's what's going to happen, to be honest with you. Like I say, the professionalism, I would like to think that the professionalism inside of him would just get on with it. But, I mean, these footballers are a bit strange at the end of the day, or can be.
I think you
anyway.
should go abroad. I think you should go abroad. I think you should go with someone completely different. Go for it. It depends. It's easy for me to say that. I think Sean Dyche is the best approach, even though we're laughing about it, in terms of keeping you up due to what he's done with Burnley. But if it ain't Sean Dyche, go abroad. There's quality managers, especially we saw it yesterday with Tottenham losing to Sport in Lisbon. That he's a quality young manager there who plays expansive style of football and who would be hungry as well. So it's hard to find both the balance of expansive football, young, hungry manager, but is Leicester does Leicester want to take that risk? I mean, who does really? Then again, Sean Dyche or that? I think it's either Sean Dyche or go someone else from abroad, because there's some quality managers out there that we don't know about, one, and two, that doesn't get mentioned enough. It's the usual managers that we've seen in the Premier League, whereas we've seen it with Palace. Vieira never managed a Premier League side. Of course, he's a Premier League legend, but he came in with experience elsewhere and he's helped Palace. And there's been, other managers as well that's come in similar positions that has helped them. So, look at Jesse Marsh at Leeds. I guess it's still early, but it's still something different. You might as well go for it. Yeah,
that's the worrying thing. It just depends on the ambition at the club, doesn't it? Like, it sounds a bit crazy, me sitting here and going from Poch 1 second to Sean Dyche the next second. But that's literally the mindset of Leicester fans at the minute. They don't know where the owners want the club or what kind of state it's in. So it's worrying.
Nah, listen, I think it is fair to feel like that, actually. It is fair to feel like that, man. But listen, I've got a couple of questions more to ask, and I'm going to move on to the next one and bring it to Emilio. Surprise package of this season. Emilio, could it be Fulham?
I hope you're right. At the end of the day, we're competitive. We've shown half a dozen games in. We're not being turned over easily. We're scoring. We're creating more opportunities. We are scoring goals. Defensively, I still think there's some weaknesses there. But again, we've got players on the bench who we've signed who will eventually establish themselves as a true back four. But we've got a bit of depth now, and that was the transfer window. I think was solid. We've got depth in most positions. We get Harry Wilson. I think, Dave, you mentioned Harry Wilson's due back, I think, beginning of October. In a weird way, we've missed him, even though we've actually created opportunities. So, Pereira on one side, you've got Harry Wilson on the other. We brought Dan James in. I think that's a shrewd sign. That could go very, very well or can go horribly wrong. But I think we've got nothing to lose there. I think we can get the most out of him. Willian, I didn't approve of that signing, to be honest, but he's here. He's got one season. A bit like yourself, Dave, with your Lingard. It could go horribly wrong, or you never know. It might be a spectacular signing. So we'll see. But again, I think it changes my view. I think it's finishing 17th, playing with pride, not getting battered. We've been in all the games we've played so far. That's a positive. But this is a long season. It's a long slog, to be honest.
Emilio, if it ain't Fulham, who do you think it could be? The surprise team for you this season?
I always, even before that, I thought Forest were going to be safe. Even with or without all the signings, I thought with that bounce back 23 years out of the Premier League, I thought they would have been a surprise package. I'm surprised you are where you are, Dave. I think I expected. I think that's. If I was a Forest fan, if Mr. Daw was here, I'd grill him because you didn't beat Liverpool when you should have done. You should have beaten Wolves when you didn't play well. Yeah, well done, Mr. Daw. You should have beaten Wolves. You should have been Everton away from home. Why we're going down, so are you guys. But I thought Forest would be the surprise package. I think they will stay. I still believe they'll stay up. I still believe someone like Southampton or Leeds and possibly Villa will be that established Premier League team that will go down. And I know we're saying Brendan Rodgers is the most likely manager to go down, but I think Ralph I think is a bit under pressure. If he doesn't get that consistency sorted, those Southampton owners I don't think will be afraid to pull the plug. And I think some of the fans are a little bit uncertain, a bit divided about Ralph. I like him, but he hasn't sorted out that consistency issue. They beat Chelsea the other week. but then I guarantee they'll lose 2 or 3-0 to Forest or Fulham. So he could be a surprise. Even the Wolves manager, again, there's been lack of investment this summer. They're struggling to score goals. Diego Costa's not going to change things for them, as far as I'm concerned. He's well past it. So is there lack of confidence in the manager, or is there just lack of money from the owner? So I think the Wolves manager could be under pressure here as well. So we're talking about the obvious, like Lampard, Brendan Rodgers, David Moyes, but actually that's not. There's who said how I think is under pressure, and the Wolves manager is also under pressure, in my opinion. But I think Forest will be the surprise package, and I think you've still got enough to stay up if you get that winning formula. But whilst you keep losing, it helps us, and whilst Leicester,
I love that.
Big game Friday night.
Very big game. Yeah.
You want to bounce back after that horrible performance. We've got to somehow get back to winning ways after a couple of defeats against Arsenal and Tottenham, even though we beat Brighton in between. So let's see how we do. We haven't won away from home this season, so I see this as a game you have to go there, not lose, more importantly, but be a little bit ambitious and be a little bit assert ourselves against it. And if we do play from the off, we might put you under pressure. But I just worry that you will bounce back from that defeat. So yeah, don't lose the game, Fulham, and we'll be okay.
Fair play, man. I love the way Emilio says, I think Forest have got enough. They still had 22 players. They should have enough.
They've got enough there to find a winning formula.
I know what you meant, man.
I'm surprised
they're all into a lorry round the back. They're all in there like refugees, lads, honestly. But
the fans
Forest players, honestly.
What are the fans saying about Cooper? They're 100% confident still? Or is there a bit of down after that Bournemouth game?
The thing is, lads, Steve's got an enormous amount of credit in the bank because we as a fan base, and for me, I'm quite lucky because I was young. I'm old enough to live through the great days of, the greatest of them all, Brian. So I'm and I've seen the kind of the mediocrity that we've put up with for so many years, and it's been mismanagement and poor players, dreadful recruitment. We were like cast adrift into the wilderness. Nobody seen Forest until like late part of last season. It was like, oh, do Forest still exist? So we've kind of come out of the shadows. Now, Steve's got a lot of credit in the bank. With the level people, with the non-hysterics, Steve's as safe as houses, right? Obviously, what you get, and I guess every fan base has got an element of this, those supporters who seem to want a 5-0 win every time you play.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were coming out of the Bournemouth game and there was a lot of anger. My anger wasn't against individuals or Steve. Or, he was kind of outcoached by Gary O'Neill, certainly second half. I was annoyed that when you've got your foot on an opponent's jugular, certainly in an unforgiving league like this, you do not let it go. My anger abated about half an hour after. And then I thought to myself, what Forest, the scenario that Forest are in, this is no disrespect to the other 19 clubs in this amazing league. Forest's job right this minute is the hardest of the lot, certainly for a manager. I don't believe anybody, Brendan's got a tough job because I think Brendan's got an age inside that is, and it's no disrespect to you, Ash. I've got a lot of time for Leicester City. Just because I'm Forest, I don't dislike Leicester, none of that. I don't believe in, I've got too much love. I don't want to hate anybody, right? Yeah. But I just think Brendan's got a tough job on. Steve, the only issue with Steve is that he's second favourite on Brighton's list, right? And he hasn't yet signed his contract extension. Now, we're all thinking, Steve created this sort of bow wave of sort of progress at Forest, like 5 years of progress within just under 12 months, which is truly astonishing. And we think that he's so invested in it emotionally that he won't go to Brighton. He might talk to them, but we think he'll stay. So, but going back to the question, sorry, I'm terrible for I think the surprise package this year, there might already be one right under our noses, and that's Brighton and Hove Albion, right? I think they're a fantastic club. I look at them and Palace as a blueprint for Forest. I say to Forest supporters, why can't we ape what Crystal Palace have done so brilliantly? Why can't we ape what Brighton and Hove Albion have done so brilliantly? Brighton's issue now is how to cope with Graham's loss and replacing him, whether it's Shettle Knutson, whether it's Steve. Brendan's on that list, but I don't know. But my real surprise package, and a club I really, really like, and I think they don't get the props that they deserve. I think Brentford are excellent. I think Brentford play great football. They're well run. Their recruitment is phenomenal. Their manager is erudite, articulate, comes across beautifully. I can imagine him being brilliant in motivation. So I think Brentford are my surprise package. My first sacking. It's awful to think about people losing their jobs, particularly in these days of inflation and a cost of living crisis, and not being able to keep the electricity on. And if the laptop goes off, lads, you'll know why it is. All right, right. But I think it could well be Brendan. But I just think Steven Gerrard, Billy. I really like Gerrard. I think he's a great guy. I think he comes across brilliantly. I think he's a good speaker. I can imagine his team talks great, but I just can't understand why he's got the likes of Coutinho, Buendia, Ollie, Danny Ings. He's got Matty Cash, our own beloved Matty Cash. You know, these lads are such a good squad, the Villa, and I just can't understand. I don't think they'll go down. Don't for a minute think the Villa will go down. Like I don't think for a minute Palace will go down. But I just think Stephen has got to be careful, because I think Stephen down the line wants Jurgen Klopp's job, and this is if he mucks this up, he'll never end up at Anfield, right? So I think Stephen's under a bit of pressure. I hope he doesn't lose his job, because I think he's a terrific guy and a terrific football man. I think Frank Lampard earned himself some time by getting that draw, or rather Jordan Pickford getting in that draw against Liverpool. But I think he's on thin ice. So I would say surprise package Brentford. Next sacking. I'm really sorry, Ash. I like Brendan. I think Brendan's a good guy, but it's a results game. And I think it's just drifting away from him at the moment. And I think Frank Lampard, if Everton get Calvert-Lewin back and they don't start scoring goals, and then they don't have a focus up front, then I think that Frank is on very thin ice. Of the others, if Leeds go on a dip, Jesse Marsh is in trouble. If, as Emilio says, Ralph Hasenhüttl's not bomb-proof, but I just think it's Brendan at the moment. And going to Tottenham, who will, given what Conte's like, they will respond after last night. It's a really tough job.
Yeah.
Fair play, man. I don't think many people are disagreeing. Ash, Billy, or D, anybody different in a surprise package? I think Brentford's a great shout, by the way.
Brian?
No, to be honest with you,
seriously, Brighton though. Brighton are fourth right now. It depends if you'll be surprised about that. But Brighton, this next appointment, I genuinely don't know how they replace Graham Potter. I think they'll be very surprising unless they manage to pull a miracle again, which they rarely do. Apart from Graham Potter, I just see them coming down. I don't see them being not getting relegated, but I just see them being like mid-table at best.
He's hoping as well. He's hoping.
I'm not even hoping. We talked about this many times. I'm not even. I genuinely feel like with the squad they've got, Graham Potter's done a fantastic job. And looking at the other side of things, I think Chelsea could be a surprise package, because right now, for me, it's City and Liverpool have dropped off. Liverpool don't have the same strength power as City does in terms of. I don't see it for now, unless maybe they might pick it up. But I think Chelsea could be very interesting. Maybe not at the start, but as the season goes on, because Graham Potter, I really highly rate him. I feel like he's a great young manager who's very good tactically, who gets the best out of his players. And now, if he manages to get Brighton fourth with those players, he's got a huge upgrade in his hands. And as time goes on, he's only going to get the best out of these players. He's got some quality players there. I think Chelsea is a team, especially for you, Dan, if you're looking at up there. I think Chelsea's a team to be worried about in the long-term future, especially with Graham Potter. Of course, with Todd Bowley, we don't know what he's going to do, but
I love Graham Potter, bro. I think he's quality, Graham Potter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think in the long run,
they just drew, by the way. They won one with Salzburg.
It's only the first game. Like as they grow,
you're right.
Yeah, and apart from that, I don't think there is any other surprises. In honesty, like Brentford, I don't know if you like Brentford, the league.
Sorry, lads, can I just jump in and say that a surprise? If you're talking about the top six, right? Who I think City. I personally think City are in a league of their own, and then there's that Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, United now, because United have started going. There's that group. I think one team that could be a surprise package in terms of maybe the Europa League or the Europa Conference, Newcastle United.
Yeah.
I think they've got a great. I mean, if you ask Dee's exactly right about Graham Potter. We all love Graham Potter. I think he's the next England manager personally. But I think the other great young manager in the country is Eddie Howe. And I saw Newcastle at St James's on the opening day of the season, and they were absolutely superb. Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, and Joe Willett were phenomenal. And now they've signed Isak, because I felt that Callum Wilson was an excellent striker. Callum's always prone to an injury. He's got a beautiful goal against us where he kind of got it to dip over Dean Henderson. It was a wonderful goal. Now they've signed Isak. I know they got beat at Liverpool, but they gave Liverpool some stress. And I think Newcastle, in terms of that European place, they might do this season what West Ham have done the last couple of seasons, So I think, again, it's all relative.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think, West Ham and Newcastle could fight it out for 7th and 8th. I'm not so sure either of them will get in the top 6, but they can certainly look that way, the way it's going, man. But I want to go.
West Ham.
No, man. Listen, West Ham have got to prove a lot to me this season with the way they've spent 190 million. They've got to be getting at least 6 for a head. I mean, they spent a lot.
That's okay. I'm going to say that West Ham surprise package. I'm going to put it out there. I'm putting West Ham surprise package. I know it's too early. I know you could think it's an overreaction, but with West Ham, I've seen it.
What surprise to what though? What they're going to do then? What they're going to do?
I don't think they're competing for Europe. I don't think they're competing for Europe.
Oh, right, surprise package in that way. Okay.
Yeah, in that way. Yeah, I think West Ham. We have to remember, like 3 years ago, West Ham were fighting relegation, and when Moyes actually came in and they managed to do very great and push on for European spots, he did overachieve with the squad, and he overachieved in his own way in terms of playing a specific style of football that's different. That's a bit not outdated, but it goes to back in the day, like counter-attacking, solid side that plays good. But with West Ham, there's been a few players like Souček, who's been influential in their side, that isn't performing the same, and you've got like players like Antonio, which is hit and miss. Like when he's on form, he's brilliant, but then he just goes for a bit. West Ham's an interesting team. Don't sleep on them. That's what I have to say. I think West Ham are going to come back down to the levels where I think they will be at with David Moyes. If they're bringing a new manager first, but with David Moyes and his style of football, I don't see them doing the same they've done last season, because it's way more competitive this time around.
Man, I need to get you on a podcast with Lawless, bro. That's gonna be a heated pod. I think what you're saying is fair.
Lawless and Maz on the same pod would be interesting.
Imagine. Can you imagine?
That's what I genuinely think. With West Ham, I think sooner rather than later, it's just going to change. I don't know.
Fair.
Maybe
that's fair, man. That's fair. You backed up White Man as well, so fair play to you. Listen, before we wrap up, I've got one more, which is going to be a quick fire one, an easy one for people to come up with. I've got to add the 3 clubs that aren't available to come on tonight, which are Brighton, Wolves, and Brentford. But out of all of the clubs on this panel, and Brighton, Wolves, and Brentford, who's going to finish the highest in the league? I will go first, and I'll give you all a little bit of a time to think.
To be honest with you.
Well, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting, but I'm going to keep D smiling. I'm going to go Palace. I'm going to go Palace because I think they're settled. I think Vieira's done a great job. I think they've definitely improved, in my opinion, and I do believe that they're consistent. I think they've got goals all over their side. I think Zaha, Elise, Eze, Edouard, Mateta, Jordan Ayew. I still think they're even getting goals at the moment from centre midfield as well at times. And they're defensively solid. I think the partnership between Anderson and Gahey is decent. I like what I see from Mitchell. I think he deserves an England call-up again. I think he's been wicked. And I can't see the others being as consistent as them. And I include Brighton now without Potter in that. And I include Wolves under Bruno Lage. So I think Palace will finish probably the best of the rest after West Ham and Newcastle. I've gone for West Ham and Newcastle to be 7th and 8th. So I've gone for Palace after that, man. But listen, Palace could if D says what is going to happen to West Ham comes true, then maybe, who knows, they could finish higher. But I believe Palace will be the ones, personally. So let's go to Emilio next.
Again, Palace, I don't know. I've seen a couple of your games, D, against Man City. Great for that, get that 2-0 lead, and obviously Man City do what they do best, still find a way of winning. You're not converting goals into victories. That's my only concern, I think, to be honest. I think you're conceding some goals there. I still think Brighton, I think there's a lot Graham Potter done a lot for that club. I've got a soft spot for Brighton because my wife, she's from that part of the world. I still think they could probably finish above it. I think they've got a good organised team, settled. He's got the best out of sort of, you could argue, average players, but I think they've got to find the right manager there, to be honest. I think Palace are going to probably finish a little bit more below mid-table this year. And this year, again, it's all about consistency. You're too many draws at the moment. I think that's your problem. I think if you can find a winning formula and convert those draws into wins, and you'll be safe. I don't disagree there, but I still think Brighton will probably finish the highest of this group of teams. Brentford, I'm still a bit uncertain about them. They can beat Man United 4-0, then they come to Craven Cottage and we beat them. Same with Brighton. They came to Fulham and we beat them. So, no, we can compete against these big teams, or so-called bigger teams than us, more established teams in the Premier League. But Brentford, again, a bit inconsistent, win heavily and then they can lose games. So I still think Brighton of that group have probably got the best in them defensively to not concede many goals. And they're probably trying to find a manager who will play a similar brand of football. So, yeah, Brighton for me.
D ain't going to be happy. Ash, what are you saying?
Yeah, sorry, D. I think Brighton as well.
What's going on, Brighton? Is this like, did Matt message you guys privately?
We're all getting £5, D. You have no idea.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. You guys to say this.
It's probably just because I've seen how much they've just took us apart, but they just look a solid unit. I know it's going to be very different now. They've lost the manager and the recruitment process is massive. Please take Brendan because then we don't have to pay him off. But if he did go, he'd do a great job because there's a solid squad there. I just think they've made a great start. I know it's still very early on, but they just look solid, and the players look like they've got a lot of fight. That's my reasoning for why I think they'll finish above all of us in here, and Wolves included.
Fair play, man. Dave, what are you saying?
Well, if Graham Potter, lads, was still at Brighton, I'd have Brighton finishing top. It won't be us, right? I would bite your hand off for 17th and a scrape on goal difference last day, doing what Leeds did last year. I'd bite your hand off for that now. We've got lots of stuff to attend to. I going to be really, really kind to all of the clubs that you mentioned, Dan, by saying that it'll be Southampton, Bournemouth, and Leeds that will go down. And I think the team that is best settled. I think on talent, Villa should be the highest.
Yeah.
They've got, there's no disrespect to anybody else. Villa's squad depth is greater. They just need to activate that squad depth and get it moving. But the team I really like, and as I've said before, I mean, I see them as a blue. I think they've got a fantastic spirit around that club. I watched the documentary. If they keep Wilf fit, then I think Palace finish above all the others. I think Vieira's gone in there and he's established himself. He's got authority. He speaks brilliantly. I seem to be dealing with the loss of Conor Gallagher really, really well. And I just think Palace have got a really, really close-knit gang mentality that sets them just above the rest. I mean, it's going to be interesting. We're at a very early stage. It's an embryonic stage of a league season. But the team I'd have most confidence in, because I think they're the most settled, and everybody's more settled than we are, right? Let's get that straight. But I'm going to go, look at it. Look at the smile on D. Palace's face. It's wide. I'm going to go for Palace.
You listen, Brighton.
Yeah. And I'm going to go, and I tell you what, my mate up above, I'm going for Leicester to stay up.
Hey.
There we go. Ash has finally got.
I think Arsenal might stay up as well, actually.
Do you reckon? Okay, cool. I'll take that one. You can come on again, Dave. Billy, what's your thoughts, man? Villa, Dave makes a great point there, man. In terms of the squad, Villa should be the ones that are looking to finish out the top of the rest of them. But I'm not so sure they will because Gerrard doesn't look to have got it ticking yet, man. So I'm going to stick with Palace. What's your thoughts, bro?
I completely agree, to be honest with you. I think Dave put it perfectly. You know, the players that we've got, the front attacking players that we've got with Coutinho, Buendia, Ollie Watkins, Danny Ings, Leon Bailey, that is enough to finish in the top half. It's whether we will or not. And I think we could finish in the top half, whether it's with Gerrard or without Gerrard. I think we certainly have enough. Again, like Dave said, it's just whether we can bring that out on the pitch and end up getting results. In terms of who I think will finish highest, before I said Brighton, that was with Graham Potter. Without Graham Potter, I think, while I still think they'll be around mid-table-ish, I don't think they're going to completely drop like a stone. I do think it'll be Palace that end up highest out of us on here. If you're including Newcastle, I think they'll probably finish the highest of the best of the rest, if you like. But out of us on here and the three previous clubs you've mentioned, Dan, I think it's got to be Palace.
Look at that. Do you know what, right? I thought most people were going to say Palace, but I'll tell you what, I'm saying Palace. I'm going to ask you. I guess you're going to go with Palace, but a couple of people still thinking Brighton are going to finish above you without Graham Potter, bro.
So I've got my points for this. All right. So with Brighton, for them to reach this point with Graham Potter, it took them about 3 years. I feel like they've got a decent enough squad, but their squad has overachieved with them. And with Crystal Palace, in all honesty, this break that we've got now, we're not playing a game for a month, is the biggest blessing that we could have. We've had the hardest fixtures so far. We faced Liverpool, Arsenal, we faced Manchester City, we faced like some Newcastle. Yes, Villa. That's our first win. So that was our easy fixture. Yeah. So we've had a difficult start in that terms. But what people don't realize about Palace is our pre-season, and this is why I'm talking about this month break being a massive lesson for us. Our pre-season was split. We had a weird pre-season. Half of our squad went to Asia with Patrick Vieira, and some key players like Zaha. Of course, Benteke's not here. Like Decore, our new signing Decore, a few other defenders, our first team, they stayed in the UK. So we had our pre-season where our first team only trained and played with each other for about 2 games. And it had a disruption going into the season. And we knew that the season was going to be a struggle in itself. So this month break off is like another pre-season mode. We're hearing from Palace that we're going into pre-season mode, working on things. And there are a few things that we need to improve on, but I feel like this month off is our biggest blessing so far. Eze, he's of course come back from an injury, and we've seen that he's been a bit tired in the last few games. He's having that break off. And as a team, for the first time, which we should have done in pre-season, it was an absolute shambles, we're working together without games. We've got a whole month of working together because Brighton postponed our games because of train strikes. Like the rest of the country, they now train strikes. So we can't play this Sunday because of Brighton's postponement. So yeah, like I think in honesty, it's our biggest blessing. And over this month or so, we'll pick ourselves back up again. And with the Brighton manager, new managers come in, it's you're asking an awful lot for him to build up what Graham Potter's built. We're saying how good Graham Potter was. It took him 3 years. So a new manager to come in and carry that straight away, it's more than just tactics. I think with the group that he had, his relationship, we've seen what he studied with his masters in terms of looking at the emotional side of the game. It's going to be very hard for me. I just don't see a Brighton manager coming in and picking it up. So I will back Palace, but those are my reasons. This month off and them losing Graham Potter, I just don't see a manager coming in and doing what he does straight away. And they've got a hard game as well. The next game is Liverpool, which should be quite interesting as well. By then, would have a new manager. They haven't got a new manager right now. So they have to bring in a new manager. He has to work with the team. For me, I have to back Palace. But I'm more confident than I was now than I was about 2 weeks ago due to various reasons, due to this break, due to Brighton losing the manager as well. Newcastle, very good shout. But Dan, I already mentioned it before. We were talking about with Pete. Newcastle's got a very good squad. But so far this season, you know, they drew against Brighton. Brighton's a solid team. Drew against Man City, of course. Wolves, a game that they should have won. They managed to get a point in the last minute against them. They lost against Liverpool. They should have done better. They should have probably beaten us. There's lots of could have and should have with Newcastle. Can they translate that? And Dave, you mentioned Isaac. Isaac, of course, is a fantastic signing, but in a funny way, he cost him against Palace because he missed a great opportunity that any striker should score. So with Newcastle, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a very tight season. I think there's going to be a split between, of course, the top 6 and Man City, the top 6 and the rest. But between Palace and Brighton, I have to back my boys. I have to say Palace.
Love that, man. Articulately put, bro. Articulately put. Listen, boys, we're going to stop it there. This has been a great show. Thank you all so much for coming on, and thank you all in the chat. Make sure you smash a like, and more importantly, make sure you go follow these guys on their socials below. Yeah, make sure you go on Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you go and follow them, and then make sure you go and look at what they're doing on their podcast. All of their content's fantastic stuff. So make sure you go and do that. Emilio, thank you for joining us, bro.
No, thank you very much. Good to speak as always, and yeah, look forward to next week and hopefully celebrating 3 points at Forest. But I predict a 1-1 draw. I think realistically, I think it's going to be quite a tight game. To be honest, both teams are going to be quite nervous. Weirdly.
Listen, let's see what happens next week. One of you will be happy, both of you will be happy. What do you think, Dave?
I want a repeat of what happened at Craven Cottage in May, rather than a repeat of what happened at the City Ground back in October when Fulham blew us away. They won 4-0. I'd like us to win 1-0, bring back Zinkernagel just for the night to see if he can ski whiff it off Riemann into the back of the net. I tell you what, we had a brilliant night. Can I just say, of all the grounds I went to in the Championship last year, Craven Cottage, after the City Ground, of course, Craven Cottage was my favourite. We had a wonderful night there. So we obviously, I would love us to win, but I think maybe, I mean, a lot of ours will think, well, it's a must win. It's very early in the season. I mean, the point that was made earlier, I think it might have been by D, that we play 15 league games up till November the 12th. And actually, the 12th of November, Palace are our last game before the World Cup. So that should be interesting. And then we come back, and I think then that leaves something like however many, 20, 24, 25. My maths is terrible. So we're almost getting like a sort of a semi-season, then a full-on season later on. So, but we'll see. I'd love a win on Friday night. I'll take it anyway, even if it goes off Lingard's bottom. I don't care,
Absolutely, man. Dave, big up yourself for coming on, man. Much appreciate you stepping in.
Can I just say, Dan, as well? You've talked about these. It's been a pleasure talking to you five lads. I don't know if you all do YouTube content. I don't do any YouTube content, so there's nothing worth following with me. All right.
Well, listen, man. Thank you. Listen, thank you for coming on, though, mate. And I know you're on Mr. Doors channel. No, thank you, bro. Ash, likewise, thank you for coming on, my guy. And hopefully, Brendan can keep his job a little bit longer. Well, depending what way you look at it, mate. But thanks for coming on, bro.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Billy, Total Screamers podcast at AV Billy. Go and make sure you follow him. Let's see if Stephen Gerrard can keep his job. And also D at Crystal Palace at D Palace and the Back of the Nest podcast. Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you all so much. Thank you guys, more importantly, for watching. We'll see you next week for more content. And until then, see you next time. Take care and up the Arsenal.